These infections, 29,173 new infections yesterday, Minister, sustained drop over 5 days. How optimistic are we as a government that this is going in the right direction?
Well, I think, we all know how quickly it can go back up again. And whilst it's very good news to see those numbers going down, I think it does show how important it is that we continue to take issues like self-isolation really seriously as well, and continue to encourage people to get that vaccine, and the double vaccine indeed, because that's going to be the way that we get out of this longer term.
We've reached the peak of the third wave and we can start to go down the other side and at least have some respite over the summer. What should I tell them?
Okay, I wish it was always that easy to predict what's going to happen next. It's obviously been very good and heartening to see that testing numbers come down the past couple of days, but we know it can go up again. So I would just encourage people to go out and get that vaccination, that second vaccination, because that is why we're seeing so many fewer people getting really sick from this virus. But I'd also encourage people to, still do follow those rules. And if you are asked to self-isolate, then do that, because that's the way that you continue to protect others.
The bloke that came up with the app, Professor Christopher Fraser, Chief Scientific Advisor for the app, says really we should be scrapping that self-isolation requirement now and replacing it with double jab. Is the government going to take note of that?
Well, I think we do know what an important tool it is, the self-isolation, to get on top of the virus. But from August the 19th, of course, sorry, August the 16th, of course, all adults that have been double vaccinated, they won't need to self-isolate unless they've got symptoms or a positive test. So that's, again, another reason to really encourage people to go out and get that second vaccine.
How will you respond if, as is possible, union leaders in the education service suggest that their members should not be able to go back to work? This is, of course, when the schools return, even if they take this new testing idea that critical workers could avoid self-isolation via a testing scheme. The unions are against it. How do you react to that, Minister?
What we'll have from August the 16th, and that's a really important date, what we'll have from August the 16th is that all adults who have been double vaccinated, they won't need to self-isolate unless they show symptoms or have had a positive test. And that goes through for all adults. And the reason that's an important date is that obviously it means that we can get more people double vaccinated before then, but also it will have provided that fire break since the end of term, where we won't have had so many young people mixing in schools. So I would really encourage everybody to go and get that double vaccination, because we know that it gives you that protection from a more serious COVID illness, and also it reduces that transmission.
The unions are agreeing with you, actually. Certainly the RMT union this morning saying that actually it doesn't matter that some of their members are double vaccinated. They should be allowed to stay at home if they've been pinged, and that the government is putting their members' health at risk by asking them and expecting them to go in.
So I think it is important that we also minimise the disruption to the economy. And that's why we've looked at certain really, really crucial sectors, and are saying that in those circumstances, those double vaccinated adults, if they haven't had the positive test, they don't have any symptoms, then they can continue to work. But this is a really, really small number of people in order to keep those truly essential services running. And services like, for example, police, fire, border control, some of the food sector, and some elements of transport as well. But as I said, the key date to move forward to is just in a couple of weeks' time, that August the 16th, where all adults who've had that double vaccination, then they will be able to avoid the self-isolation unless they've got symptoms or the positive test.
So are you saying to the RMT union, who are threatening legal action on behalf of its members, that it is safe for their members to go to work, despite them being pinged, if they've been double jabbed?
I'm saying that we need to continue to keep those critical areas of the economy open as far as possible. We need to move on to this next stage, which will be, at the moment, is on August the 16th. And that's an important date, because that's a date by which we'll have more adults double vaccinated, but also we'll have had that fire break since the end of the school term as well. So that's why we're looking forward to that date.
Yeah, but to answer my question, Minister, is it safe for RMT members to go to work even if they've been pinged, if they've been double vaccinated?
Well, every single employer obviously needs to look at the safety of their staff, as they've done throughout this, and they've had good guidance. We've got many employers who are saying in these really, really crucial sectors of the economy, and it will only be the most critical of the critical workers, if I can say that, who, for those workers, if they have had the double vaccination, then they can come back if they continue to have that negative test.
So it's okay for them to risk their health?
I think it's really important that all employers look at the safety arrangements that are put in place, and they continue to have discussions with the health officials. And this is something that we're continually looking at as we move through the next stages of the pandemic.
Do you think children should wear masks when they return to school in the new year?
We've already said that children won't need to wear masks when they return to school, and that's already been said from
But we saw some schools at the end of this school year, the end of the school year, still suggesting that children should wear masks. Is it down to the individual? I think there's some schools are a little confused.
Well, obviously, schools should follow the guidance, and we've said that they don't need to do so.
Don't need to. So what if they want to?
They don't need to do so, and the guidance is that they don't need to.
But what if they want to? What if a school is still doing it?
As I've said, we've said to them that they don't need to. Obviously, every single workplace needs to look at their own safety measures, and we've got very strong guidance from the DfE on the safety measures that they should have in place for schools.
If it is safe for them, if they've been double jabbed, to go to work, even if they've been pinged, why not for others?
So what we need to do is make sure that we get as many vaccinations into people's arms, because that is an absolutely key part of beating the vaccination, which is why we want to have the next couple of weeks of getting those more vaccinations before we move into that next stage for the rest of the double vaccinated adults. But we've also got many of those in these really, really essential services saying, if they have adults who have had the double vaccination, who've had the protection of that couple of weeks after you get your vaccination as well, that they would be able to return to the workplace. But the employers will obviously need to look at that very closely as well. And many employers have been putting in places mechanisms to make sure that that can also keep workers safe.
Yeah. So if you are double jabbed and you've had a fortnight after your last jab, then you are safe to go to work.
Well, we know that people can still get COVID after having had a double jab, but we also know that having had the double jab means it's far less likely to be a really serious or life-threatening illness. And so that's why it's not quite so simple as saying, once you've had your double vaccination, you'll never get COVID, because that's simply not the case. But we know that having the double vaccination reduces both the chances of serious life-threatening illness, but also reduces the amount of transmission that you'll give to other people.
Why will I be safe on the 16th of August, but potentially not safe today?
This is all about keeping the whole community and how we react together as a community. And as I said, the date of the 16th of August was set because it's been a fire break since the end of the school term, so we won't have seen so many people mixing in schools, but also it'll have meant that more people will have been able to get that second vaccination. And as I said, the second vaccination can help reduce the amount of transmission that's going through community.
It is reported that the Prime Minister is concerned that a lot of young people, I appreciate your children's minister, but the age group 18 to 29 are not taking up the jab in high enough numbers. If that is the case, what does the government plan to do about that, Minister?
I really, would encourage young people to go and get that vaccination. It is the way to build that greater freedom into your lives. And as I've said, from August the 16th, all adults, all over 18s who've been double vaccinated, they won't need to do the self-isolation unless they've got that positive test or showing symptoms. And that is the way to get that much greater freedom in your life as well. So I will certainly be encouraging my children who are in that age group now of young adults to have their vaccinations. They've had their first vaccinations and to get their second ones as well. And it's so important because we know that it protects you from the more serious COVID disease, but we also know it reduces that community transmission. And so it is a really key part of trying to live with this virus and get back to those freedoms that we all love so much.
Students returning to university, do they have to be fully vaccinated in order to attend lectures?
So what we've always done throughout this pandemic is prioritised access to university. And one of the things that we really want to do is encourage young people to get that double vaccination, because as I've said, that's the way that you'll minimise disruption to your own university career. And I will certainly be encouraging both of my student sons to have their second vaccination before they go back to university.
Will it become a requirement?
No, we must make sure that we continue to prioritise education. And if they want to be able to avoid the self-isolation, such as we have said for other adults, double vaccinated adults by August the 16th, if you have not got a positive test, if you don't have symptoms, you won't need to self-isolate. So for the students who are returning to university, that's a really important.
Talk to me about travel, if you would please. Spain, France, Greece. What's the government's advice if people have a holiday booked for those countries?
Well, as we know, we've always looked at each different country's situation individually, and I would advise people to look at the advice that's coming through from gov.uk and make sure that they follow that guidance on each of these different countries. I obviously can't preempt any decisions that might be made by the transport team. As Children's Minister, I won't preempt their decisions.
No, indeed not. But you are representing the government this morning. So the third of a million Brits that headed out over the weekend, they will be anxiously wondering whether they're going to have to cut short their holidays to come back to the UK if we change the rules again. What is the discussion within government?
Well, I think it's really important that people do look at the rules, and people who have booked holidays overseas will have known that, you know, there's a risk of situations changing. But as we've now had the pandemic, you know, for many, many months now, and as we've all seen, the situation can change, and that's why it's very important that we in the UK also look at what's happening with other countries overseas, and that people do follow the guidance that's appropriate to the country that they're returning from.
And a thought for your Health Secretary this morning. He got a proper kicking over the weekend after saying that we shouldn't cower from COVID. He misspoke. Was it any more than that?
Well, he apologised for that and quite rightly deleted his tweet and has given a very heartful apology. I mean, Sajid himself has lost relatives to COVID and knows that awful grief that so many families have. But I think what he's trying to do is encourage us that we can also have that hope from the vaccine, that people, by having that vaccine, and you know, there are many, many people in this country have stepped forward and leading the world, and it's, you know, 7 out of 10 adults have now had their double vaccine. But we do need to continue to keep that momentum up, and especially for younger adults to please step forward, because that will protect you from getting sick, and it will protect the people that you love and your neighbours as well.
Why did the Health Secretary need to apologise for the word cower? Is it offensive to you?
I think that he obviously felt that he'd used the wrong word, which is why he did apologise. I mean, Saj himself has lost relatives to COVID, so he knows what it's like to have grief for somebody who's lost a loved one due to the disease.
But would you use the word cower? Is it that offensive?
I think what he's trying to do is to really encourage people to come forward and get that vaccination, because we know that vaccination is a key part of turning the course of this pandemic round.
But did he need to apologise for the use of the word?
Well, I think he felt that he needed to.
No, I know he felt it, but do you feel it?
You know, so no, but he felt it, and it's his personal.
Minister, we know what he feels. I'm wondering whether you agree with him.
So I think the important thing is that we need to get back as much as possible to normal life. And the way through that, and to make sure that we get that confidence to get back to a normal life, which we get by having the vaccination and by people following those rules. So
I sense it really is a simple yes or no. Do you feel that the Health Secretary needed to apologise for the use of the word cower?
I think he has decided, and he is a very responsible person, that he decided to do that. I don't write Sajid's tweets for him. He does. And I think that's a really important point.
He was right to apologise.
that he felt that he wanted to apologise.
No, but he
and
was right to
he did.
apologise then.
And that is his decision. And
Right.
he felt he wanted to, and many people have said thank you to him for doing so. So that I think it's really important to remember that politicians are human beings like other people. We've lived with the grief and the difficulty of this pandemic, and he felt that word, on reflection, he wanted to change. And I respect him for doing that.
Let's talk about kids that are younger. You're here to talk about adoption today.
Yes, this is a really, really important message that I'm giving today. We're launching a new adoption strategy today. And the really good news is that over the past decade, the number of children that are waiting for adoption has more than halved. And we know that the best place for children is to be in a loving, stable family. But unfortunately, there are some children who can't stay with their own birth parents. And for some of those children, being adopted is the best solution. So in our adoption strategy that we're launching today, we're significantly increasing support for adoptive families. We set up the Adoption Support Fund about 6 years ago, and that provides ongoing therapy and family support to adoptive families. And we're more than doubling that today, but also putting in new national standards to make sure that all adoption across the country is well supported. And that'll be through the regional adoption agencies that we've been setting up over the past few years, and which cover nearly all of the country. And we really want to make sure that children who do need that loving, stable, forever family can get there as quickly as possible. So we're also encouraging adopters from all sorts of backgrounds or different ethnicities or walks of life to step forward to consider adopting and making that loving family for a child.
The prospective adoptive families and in children, how does this work in practical terms? Good morning, Minister.
Good morning. So this is really good news. Over the past decade, we've halved the number of children waiting for adoption. And we've also introduced the Adoption Support Fund, which we've now more than doubled as well, to make sure that families that do step forward to provide that loving home to a child really do get that support, not only during childhood, but through teenage years and into adulthood as well. And this new adoption strategy is going to be building on that support. It's going to be setting out new national standards to make sure that families get that support all over the country, and also increasing recruitment of adopted families from all walks of life, especially some children from still different ethnic backgrounds can wait longer for adoption. So we want to make sure that people from different ethnic backgrounds can step forward for adoption, and that families that maybe thought beforehand that they couldn't step forward. So, for example, a single person can adopt. You don't need to own your own home to adopt, but provided you can give that loving family support, you'll be able to step forward for adoption.